Are electoral bonds a way of cleaning up the funding of Indian politics or a covert way of influence peddling? That is the question before the Supreme Court that has begun this all-important hearing today. I'm Barkha Dutt, you're with the Mojo story. On this special broadcast today, we'll be looking at the debate around electoral bonds. We'll be speaking actually to the key bureaucrat who was finance secretary at the time when this measure was rolled out by the BJP government. A brainchild of former finance minister Arun Jaitley, the government argued that electoral bonds were meant to replace the use of cash to fund politics and therefore end the entry of black money into politics. But critics of electoral bonds argue that because these bonds that have to be purchased from the State Bank of India basically allow donors to remain anonymous, they are denying citizens the right to know if there are any potential quid pro quos between those who fund political parties and decisions those parties may subsequently make. This all-important hearing is before the Supreme Court, being heard by the Chief Justice of India along with 4 other judges of the Supreme Court. The petitioners are arguing that electoral bonds promote both corruption as well as opacity in a democracy. But joining us now on the program today is a very special newsmaker. I want to welcome to the program Subhash Garg. Mr. Garg has been Finance Secretary in the Government of India at a time when, in fact, all the action took place around the unveiling of these electoral bonds. But he's also captured several critical stories around who said what when this plan was implemented. In his book, his must-read book, We Also Make Policy. Mr. Garg, it's good to see you again. And I was really thinking of your book today when I was following the hearings in the Supreme Court. Let me start by asking you, as a bureaucrat, a serving bureaucrat, of course, you probably had to implement what the government of the day had to ask you to do. Today, you're free to speak your mind. You're no longer in government. Do you believe electoral bonds actually help cleaning up funding, or do you think they encourage corruption?
So let me first give you this caveat that I was free to speak my mind in the government as well. So nothing has changed after I left the government. The chapter which you would read in this book about the electoral bonds will probably bear this out. So when I first heard of the electoral bonds, I was in the US in the position of ED in the World Bank, and I also got the same impression that there is some devious design perhaps to get the money through some devious or covert way. That was the kind of impression I got. But when I landed in the job, and it was my responsibility to, in a way, to design this scheme, to implement the decision which had already become a law in the country, because the amendment had already been made. And the only thing which was left out was to roll it out. At that stage also, I wanted first to convince myself whether it's desirable scheme to do it, or not a desirable scheme for me to oppose it. And after those initial interactions with Arun Jaitley, the finance minister, I was convinced that this is there to solve a problem. This is not the best of the solution, but this is better than any other solution which is on the offer and which can work. So I am absolutely convinced that the scheme, as it was implemented, was a better option than what was existing. And I think the fact of its implementation over the last couple of years also probably bears it out, that over 9,000 crores worth of electoral bonds have been sold. The ruling party has got something less than 60%. Others have also got it. So I don't think there is any serious
So
problem.
actually, let's look at the figures. In fact, since you've mentioned the figures, the BJP has actually received 57% as of 2022
Yeah.
of all electoral bonds. The next party is the Congress, receiving about 10%. So there's a huge gap. And one of the arguments the petitioners made in court is there's something status quoist about electoral bonds. And the third party is actually a surprise. It's a regional party. It's the Trinamool Congress, receiving 8% of all electoral bonds. 25 parties have signed up, registered to receive these bonds. Only the Communist Party, on principle, has refused to take money from the electoral bonds. Now, let me tell you what the commonsensical question will be from people who are not technical people. We are not experts. We only want you to tell us why anonymity. Why is anonymity critical? Why should I not know that these 5,270 crores ये कहाँ से आई ये किसने दिए बीजेपी को और this 964 crores to the Congress, who gave this money to the Congress and so on? Why is anonymity being encouraged? Why is that a good thing, Mr. Garg?
For two reasons. Number one, the anonymity also needs to be a little bit demystified. There is no anonymity as far as the companies are concerned that how much they have contributed to the political parties. So that side of the equation we know. Of 9,000
and we know it because they have to file it, they have to put it in their financial papers, in their financial documents.
It is there in their accounts. It's an accounted for expenditure. This is taken out from their bank accounts, given out. So this is all available. You can list out. If you like, if we have patience to go through all the companies' balance sheets and then list it out, it would be available as an expenditure. We also have transparency as regards which party has received it. So, like you just displayed the number, so that part is also available. What is only not available is the connection between which company donated to which party. That is the only thing which is not available, right? And
why is that a good thing?
Yeah, that brings to me to the second point. You see, we can't wish away the reality of what happens. And it's also true if we assume that these donations are given by the companies to the political parties out of some charitable or pious objective. That is, I think, something too much to assume. They are hardcore businesses. The political parties are there in the businesses to run it, the country, and they need money. Very clearly, I don't think there should be any doubt about it, that all those who are giving donations through electoral bonds are giving either to buy the political peace, or maybe, in that we don't know, some specific favor or payments or whatever, right? So that is truly the reason why the donations are made.
Now, but sir, 1 minute. You just said political donations almost always in the real world, and I agree with you, they're not coming from charity or ideology. If they are, rarely, they're mostly to buy peace or favors. Isn't it important then for the citizen to know, for example, that if company X, I don't want to name any company X gives 100 rupees to government Y, and government Y subsequently passes a law that is beneficial to the company, the citizen has the right to know, to join those dots, don't they?
Now, I think this brings the other dimension of this. What is the citizens' sort of right or expectations or legitimate interest to know about it? I saw what Attorney General said in the Supreme Court, and you can discuss this in the legal context, or you can discuss it in the policy or desirability context. I don't think we need to go into the legal aspects of it. The Supreme Court will hear, and all parties will. In my overall basic assessment, there is nothing illegal about it. But I'm more interested to take up your question from the desirability point, whether citizens should know it or not. Now, it's always good that if you have this information that X party gave it to Y, X company gave it to Y party, and that information is available publicly domain. But in the process of making it happen, if you kill the whole scheme, then no one will give the donations if this information is available. The kind of fractious policy or polity which we have in the country, the revenge kind of mindset which is there, if X is given to A party, that A party might actually take it on them. Those kind of issues are there, and the businessmen are not comfortable with that. That is the reason why the earlier scheme, which was there completely transparent, that the companies could have given to anyone, disclosing, they could have actually claimed the complete tax exemption as well. But no one gave, very few people gave. So do you want a scheme which is transparent, good, and give the information to the citizens, but actually doesn't work?
Well, I think citizens don't care that much about how political parties fund themselves. So their answer would be yes.
So then, if the situation is of that situation that no bond or no funding comes, I think citizens are also, they should equally be concerned that if political parties don't have at least somewhat more transparent means of funding, they would go back to to fund themselves from the complete non-transparent one, like they were earlier doing by raising the cash from them.
Let me ask you one more question. This story is in your book. This story is about how the then RBI governor Urjit Patel responded to this proposal. Now, currently bonds are purchased from the State Bank of India. They were actually meant to be handled by the Reserve Bank of India. Urjit Patel, who initially, as you write in your book, supported the idea, later started having reservations. He felt that there was going to be a misuse by shell companies. He wanted them to be issued in DMAT form, in digital form. And one of the things that you write in your book is that Urjit Patel was combative and confrontational on the issue of electoral bonds. Do you think that there was merit to Mr. Patel's concern, as you capture yourself in your book, that there could be a misuse of bonds by shell companies?
See, the two concerns which you have outlined, I think the major concern which they had, and right from the beginning, was that there was a potential of misusing these bearer bonds as currency. That was the RBI's primary job, monetary management of the country, and they had this serious concern that can it circulate as currency and then become a mode of a non-transparent black money circulation in the country. That was a very legitimate concern, and we spent a lot of time with them to design the whole scheme in such a way that its use as a currency or circulation was minimized, rather stopped. We brought down the period to a very low period. It became so. In fact, there is no evidence that these are circulating as currency. The fact is borne out now 5-6 years later. So that concern was legitimate, which was addressed, and the facts are that it's not being misused in that way. The other concern that these might be used by shell companies or otherwise, for that concern was not much of the Reserve Bank. That came from the Election Commission. Right. This was not the major concern of RBI. But when Urjit Patel changed his mind, it was more out of that thing that he is trying to offer something which is better or which is more transparent, DMAT solution, we will do it, let no one. So though that
and you all didn't agree to the DMAT form because you thought anonymity could not be preserved in that form.
Exactly. The DMAT account is to the depository, every transaction is known. So if the bank or the Reserve Bank which is holding it on the both sides, then the whole thing, so the scheme would have fallen flat if this mode was adopted.
What would happen hypothetically if the court says continue with electoral bonds but end anonymity, or the citizen has the right to know who the donor is to which party under the RTI Act? I'm only hypothesizing there. What would happen according to you to this scheme?
It will die. It's premature death.
It will die. So if anonymity is taken away, electoral bonds cannot work according to you.
And it will be replaced by the earlier mode of giving corporate donations through the shell companies or in cash, as it was happening. I don't think people will give donations to political parties through their accounts in a KYC compliant manner and record this in their accounts. That's the, you go back to
if you were asked why is this way of funding with its anonymity better than the earlier way of funding, what is the one argument you would make?
So my argument is very simple. It's much better than the cash mode of funding, which was prevalent earlier, and which was the predominant mode of funding. It is less desirable than the corporate company law-based funding, but which was not actually operating. So it's very simple. It's a better solution to the existing problem. Unless we come up with a more functionally efficient solution in the Indian situation, this perhaps, to my mind, is the way to go.
One last criticism of these bonds has been whether foreign funding can come in through the back door. And the petitioners argued in the Supreme Court today that there are many spaces, like my own, for example, the media, where you bring in foreign investment, it needs approval by the Foreign Investment Direct Board. Now, currently, foreign entities cannot buy bonds, but Indian entities with foreign investors can in fact purchase bonds. The petitioners are arguing that this is tantamount to foreign money entering through the back door and therefore a kind of foreign interference in India's democracy. How do you respond to this criticism?
See, again, I think this is quite a mistaken assumption. The foreign investment in Indian companies is very widespread. There may be from 100% foreign owned Indian companies to the companies where they have minority shareholding and all. Across the board, $1,600 billion of foreign investment, even in the portfolio side, is there. Forget about the FDI side, which is another much better. Now, it is necessary that any company who wants to buy the bonds has to have an account in India. This can only be bought in rupees, and therefore the SPI account through which the foreign controlled company, let us say for a minute, buys the bond, it's as good an Indian company as any other, even if it has a majority of foreign holdings and all. And again, probably the record will bear it out that today there are many Indian companies which are owned by the non-resident Indians abroad, and they are more present in the electoral bonds donations than purely foreign companies. I don't think that's a serious concern.
So finally, let me understand your position. I think you recognize that on paper, at least, the corporate funding of political parties, which was declared in your tax returns, was the best way because it had transparency. But it was an untrue way because people were paying under the table in cash. That was never accounted for. So of all of the bad options on how to fund political parties, you think this is the least of the bad options according to you?
Exactly.
So if I were the Chief Justice and you were the government's Attorney General and you had to convince me, what would you say to me?
See, the Attorney General is perhaps arguing more on the legal side of it.
Right.
As I said earlier. Legal questions are very different, whether it's constitutionally permissible or not, whether it disturbs somebody's fundamental rights or citizens' fundamental rights or not. Policy is more about practical, desirable, more transparent, more functional ways of doing things. So I'm more on policy, not on the legal side. So if Supreme Court were to hear me, I would be speaking more on the policy side, not on the legalities.
And that is why your book is called That's why, sir, your book is called We Also Make Policy. But thank you very much, Subhash Garg. This has been very interesting conversation. This is going to be a critically important case in the Supreme Court for all of the larger political, philosophical, and legal questions that it raises. And it's actually wonderful that it's being live streamed, so you can actually, at least up until that point, have absolute transparency in what is being said and not said. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, Barkha. All the best to you.
Thank you. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.